Well, who the hell is Chief Tracy to decide what is and isn't released for the city of Wilmington? I mean, I understand he's the police chief, but he's just a police chief. That is not what y'all intended.
Right.
For far too long, the police have been running the government. And that committee that you just named is a prime example of the police running the government. And in the words of the late, great Muhammad Ali, all I want to say to you is, rumble, young man, rumble.
Welcome to The Source. This is Kobe Owens.
Want to be past the street today.
And welcome to The Source again. Look, we have a very packed schedule today, so I want to jump straight into it. Over West Center City, there was an incident that resulted in 2 people being shot, a young man being critically injured. Jay, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, it's a continuation of what we've been talking about probably for the last 3 weeks. It's not happenstance that when we talked about the officer that resigned because of the allegation of soliciting sex from a minor, and he ended up getting rearrested, possession of drugs. It wasn't happenstance. He's in West Center City, and there's ongoing open-air drug dealing in close proximity to the Hicks Anderson Center, and I'm going to say it again. And if folks want to dispute it, bring the data to back it up. The fact of the matter is there are more shootings in close proximity to the Hicks Anderson Center than anywhere else in town. And it's because of what's allowed to thrive and go on in close proximity to that center. It's because of the vacant properties. And there just appears to be overall ineffectiveness on the part of the police department in de-escalating and even toning that down to any significant extent. And people are sick and tired of it, and it's a shame and a disgrace that you have that kind of activity going on for years, and it dates back past this administration, but you know, this administration asked to be the new administration, but when you have this kind of activity going on in proximity to the city's only owned community center and a daycare center, which had to move and rent to another daycare center because they were fearful of what was going to happen to children with all the shooting going on in that area in proximity to the daycare center and the Hicks Anderson Center. It's just outrageous.
No, and I agree with you. And again, a little more background about that shooting. It was 2 men aged 27 and 34, and it was the 27-year-old that was in critical condition. But this seems to be a trend that keeps going on here in the city, especially after we saw such a high homicide rate in 2021 and in 2020. But there is an update that the police did make an arrest in this case. A 27-year-old from Newark was being charged for this shooting.
Yeah, but this continues to make my point. A 27-year-old from Newark charged.
Yeah.
Okay? So you've got people who don't live in the West Center City area, but that's where we end up having this ongoing activity and now a shooting from outsiders and outside entities, and here again, it's outrageous. The administration, to its credit, in proximity to that area, brought 2 liquor stores, tore one of them down, the other one's inoperable, because that was part of the problem, and I appreciate the fact that they did that, but at this point it's still woefully insufficient, and got to do a better job of enforcement. I want to congratulate the Wilmington Police Department for making that arrest, because that has not been commonplace with these shootings. And as they bragged about, one city council person bragged about the fact that there was a shooting on the east side a couple weeks ago and somebody was arrested almost immediately. That gives you good cause to be optimistic, and hopefully that will continue. But here again, the problem I have is 41 murders last year in the city, breaking the all-time record, and how many arrests?
Right. Exactly. And this leads us into the next subject that seems to be a hot topic right now. A lot of people on council are talking about what are they going to do about the homicide rate. And it looks like council has finally decided to take a step forward and partner with a Newark, New Jersey Community Public Safety Collective, which is a community group from Newark, New Jersey that helped lower their homicide rates in the city. They were down here in the city of Wilmington for the few days this week. But, one of the things that they even stated is Wilmington has no shortage of intervention groups here who are on the street trying to stop the violence. It's just a lot of them don't coordinate with one another. And I know you had a big hand in the Hope Commission and what they're trying to do over there. What would you say to all these different groups that are working? How can we work better together?
Well, first of all, I don't want to be a naysayer. By the same token, nobody knows the city of Wilmington than people who live and work in the city of Wilmington.
I agree.
Nobody knows better. You've got these entities that are working hard, doing their own thing, and in their own way, trying to bring solution and a change to the situation. I was hopeful that the administration would look back to its own Hope Commission plan, revise it, and fund it. But if this is the way they want to go, then so be it. At least they're doing, on the one hand, at least they're doing something. On the other hand, I just am not sure that an outside entity that's not familiar with the city of Wilmington can be as effective as Wilmingtonians, but it's a start. I'm disappointed in the fact that here again, we're going to study for a year. Well, what happens during this year, and how are residents of the city of Wilmington going to be involved? And my final thought with that is, for far too long, we've got people as old as me sitting at the table trying to help make decisions as to what happens with these younger people, and nobody is talking to the young people who are adversely affected, to young people who are involved, and until we include the entities that are impacted the most, I think we're making a terrible strategic error in judgment and process. The young people are creating the problem. The young people are suffering from the problem, and they need to be involved.
I agree with you. I think they're the centerpiece of all of this, and I've talked about it before. Now, in this group, they're supposed to make recommendations and suggestions on how Wilmington is to implement their community-based public safety initiatives, which also includes, how to work with intervention organizations, forming hospital-based violence intervention programs, and creating public safety roundtable. Now, these are all suggestions that have been made already, but they're going, the mayor's office and administration and city council have put out a $38,000 contract to have this group come in, tell them exactly how to do it. And then hopefully what we will see from there is the implementation side of things, and things finally start to come down. I've said it before, this is not blaming anyone. It has to be a full circle, and everyone has to put everything aside in order to get this done, because at the end of the day, the more we all fight with one another, the more violence is going to take place on our streets, and the more lives are going to be lost.
Well, and I said it was my final thought, but here again, you know, what are we doing to put these young people to work?
Yeah.
And as we speak, how many young people are going to be eligible? How many people are going to be able to work in the summer youth program this summer? And what happened to all the jobs that were supposed to be created as a result of the so-called port expansion? You know, if people are working and that they're in a position to take care of themselves, feed their families, etc., then a lot of this crime goes away. But, you know, I'm disappointed after we've had all this long-term discussion about the expansion of the port and all the great things that were supposed to happen as a result of it, that none of it's happened.
No, I agree with you. And, you know, over the next few years, we're going to see a lot of federal dollars still come into the city, especially with infrastructure money, or into the state, period, right? So making sure that there's a pathway to get young people trained in the proper field, so that they can't just be flaggers, but they're also working on sites with good paying jobs and benefits, and getting them back to work to deter them from being in a life of crime. So I agree with you there. You also have to look at, you know, how are we getting to them? Where are we meeting them at? So there should be a strong effort to be in every single community center across the board. It's unfortunate the city only has one, but Hicks Anderson is a great place to start, but you need to be in every single community center and try to meet as many youth where they're at.
Community centers, churches,
yes,
and quite frankly, on corners.
Yeah.
You know, we need to meet people where they are. We need to meet our young people, encourage them to get involved and do positive things and get in positive programs and activities. And you can't do that without, in my opinion, good street workers doing good street work.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. I agree with you. So our next subject has a little to do with some corruption and what's been going on with government officials. A few years ago, a former state legislator, Rebecca Walker, who was the state director of nursing, lied when she wrote official records saying she had administered required alcohol testing to employees at her job prior to that, which was with the Division of Forensic Science. So it has been an ongoing court battle ever since, and now we're just waiting for the verdict after Lieutenant Governor Beverly Hall Long actually testified in the case on Tuesday. You have anything on that?
Well, she said she didn't commit any fraud. She didn't do anything illegal. She may have made some mistakes, but it wasn't intentional. And it's not happenstance that in that trial, she chose a judge over a jury. And you don't do that unless you're optimistic about the judge ruling in your favor. That's number one. And number two, at the point where the lieutenant governor weighs in and is a witness in terms of a character reference, in my opinion, one or two things are going to happen. Either she walks or she gets slapped on the hand. And if anything other than that happens, then I would be very, very surprised.
Well, you know, this has been an ongoing investigation.
But if it was me, I'd already be in jail.
You know, the position at the Division of Forensic Science was actually created by Becky Walker when she was a state rep in 2015. And then she assumed that role after she left that office. With the Office of the State Medical Examiner. And it was created to kind of reform, right, that office, and, you know, make sure that things are being held to a certain standard after high-profile scandals had hit the office a few times. So, you know, this is an ongoing thing. And, again, we should have the verdict by the end of this week.
Well, you're going to have the verdict by the end of this week. And you've got the situation with the state auditor pending, and
yes,
that's getting ready to go to trial. But the fact of the matter is, it appears that the Attorney General's office does not have a good record of conviction as it relates to these high-profile cases, and I would be surprised if anything happens to either one of them. They're either going to walk or they're going to get slapped on the hand, and it's business as usual.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you.
Well, we need to disagree on something.
Well, we will soon. I agree with you on this, though. But our next topic is, I just want to update everyone and the viewers on what's going on with the budget process right now. We're in 3 different budget processes as we get close to the end of the fiscal year. Both the state, the county, and the city of Wilmington are all in their budget process right now. As you know, the mayor had proposed a 7.5 property tax increase, as well as some cuts to the police department, as well as some other departments in his FY23 budget. So far, you've heard from various departments in the Wilmington City government about where they believe the money needs to go. They talked about why they're allocating certain money to certain places. There's been proposals from both Wilmington Fire and also from the Wilmington Police for additional help. Especially since what's going on with the Wilmington Fire Department, and they're still a little upset about what happened with their schedule change, which actually went to court. And then with the Wilmington Police, of course, the big topic there is how is this Office of Violence Prevention going to be implemented, as well as what's going to be done to reduce the homicide and gun violence rate here in the city, and how it's probably being allocated to fund those efforts. And then on the county side, can you give us a quick update on the county side?
Well, the county has proposed a budget that's higher than any budget we've ever had. By the same token, there's no proposed tax increase. There's no proposed increase in water fees. And when the county executive presented the budget, I made a motion that failed for a second to just go on and pass it right then. Council's not going to change anything in that budget. So there's nothing controversial about it. There is no increase in taxes, no increase in I'm sorry, I said water, but there's no increase in sewer fees because the county does not provide water. But so I was prepared to vote for that budget as soon as he presented it. On the city side, I have major concerns. I got major concerns about $8 million being identified to reduce violence, which is wonderful. Mm-hmm. But if you don't say specifically what it's going to be used for, and it's not designated as such in the budget, then I think that's a problem. It leaves a lot of latitude for mischief, and I certainly agree with $8 million to reduce the violence and crime within the city, but I think it needs to be designated. And I do not support the tax increase and the water and sewer increase in this fiscal climate. The fact of the matter is the city has this proposed budget at $171 million, is the highest budget ever proposed, and in this fiscal climate, with gas at $4, inflation higher than it's been in 40 years, I just think it's out. And all the support that we're getting in federal funding, I think it's outrageous to impose yet another undue burden on the residents of the city of Wilmington, because whether you're a homeowner or not, if you're renting, your rent is going to go up. When the tax goes up, the landlord is going to pass it on to you. And if you own a home, your taxes are going to go up, and this is with 40-year highest inflation, gas $4 a gallon, diesel fuel $5 a gallon, and to impose this with all the federal support we're getting, I think is just fundamentally unfair and inappropriate.
No, and I agree with you, right? First off, the gas prices are killing us right now. And, you know, we're seeing that fluctuate a little bit. It dropped down for a little bit. Now it's going back up. On the federal side, they're trying to find solutions.
But why are you being nice about that? When Trump was president, gas was $2. Now it's $4.
It is, but I also recognize why it's like that and what's going on with our international affairs.
I don't recognize it.
It's human rights
no,
being violated.
Suppose that human rights are being violated, but the oil companies have record profits.
They do.
Price gouging is supposed to be against the law, and nobody's doing anything about the price gouging. And so, as far as I'm concerned, as it relates to gas prices, what they're saying is in part fake news. What they're saying is in part a hoax, and it's an unfair and undue burden on everybody who's got to buy gas in this country, because to allow these oil companies to continue to thrive and to not do, say, or act about anything as it relates to price gouging is just outrageous.
No, I agree with you, but here's the thing. You look at what's going on a national level, international level, what's going on over in Ukraine with Russia and how tensions are still growing over there, and sanctions are
What's that got to do with my gas here?
It's because of the sanctions that we're putting on each other. Russia's reacting to the sanctions, so gas prices are going up. But here's the thing also, right?
But gas prices are going up based on what oil is selling for a barrel in the market. What's that got to do with what goes on at the gas station here? If somebody put $100,000, 100,000 gallons of oil in the gas station here, gas in the gas station here, whatever he paid for it that day is what it actually cost the owner of that gas station. So how do you raise it 20 cents because the price of crude oil a barrel has gone up in the market? It has never made any sense to me. And, the economists know far more than I do. All I know is I'm tired of paying it.
No, I agree with you on that. But again, all I have to say on this property tax increase is, one, we have still not fully recovered from a pandemic. And I know people are tired of being inside. People are tired of having to wear masks. You're seeing airlines now drop the mask mandates. You see in cities opting to stay mask-free instead of listening to some of the rising numbers as the variants keep happening because we fail to get herd immunity. We're not completely out of this pandemic 100% yet. And it's sad because it has been so long. But the longer we draw this out, the more harm it's going to do to a lot of people. There are people still suffering every single day who's still working on modified schedules, who still have not made up that lost money they lost in the very beginning, who are now, 3-4 months behind on their rent still. There's a lot of things going on. There's still steps being taken overall, but to raise property taxes, that's just going to increase prices. The other day I was talking to a lady who was looking for help with rental assistance, and she was talking about how because of this, her landlord's already preparing for the increase, so he's going to be increasing rent already. So these are just some of the things that people are dealing with, and they're very nervous about whether they will be able to stay in this city or if they're going to have to find somewhere cheaper outside the city.
Well, it's not. But one of the questions I have is, and, the congressional delegation, and this time the one who I like the least in terms of Senator Carper, but they big photo op, big press because of them helping with the infrastructure in the second city that the mayor is building. And, to expand that riverfront, which is now a tale of two cities, and expand it further east. And I'm not so sure that this tax increase isn't related to the expansion of the tale of two cities, where we're going to expand what's on the river, what we're building on the so-called riverfront. But there ain't been no shootings down there. Okay, and that there's no problem with patrolling down there, and I'm just not sure that part of this proposed tax increase isn't somewhat, if not directly related to the expansion. And if that was the case, you just got federal assistance to be able to expand the infrastructure down there. So in addition to the ARPA money and the COVID money, now you've got additional infrastructure money. So why are you imposing this additional burden on the citizens of the city of Wilmington? I don't understand it.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you. And then also, real quick, I wanted to talk about, let the viewers know if there's any updates about the Wilmington housing scandal going on. Well,
I haven't seen anything, but it's my limited understanding that the investigation is continuing. I don't know what the news journal is doing. And the biggest thing in this is what HUD is doing. Mm-hmm. Because the plan that they had originally was to simply put the legal notice out and say that in order to pay back this $446,000, we're going to just accept a reduction in the grant of $140-some thousand over a 3-year period of time. That didn't go well, and so I'm interested to see what Plan B is going to be and how HUD is going to proceed and what HUD decides on it.
Has there ever been an investigation like this before in the city?
To my limited knowledge, this level of noncompliance, I'm not familiar with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, we'll definitely be following as more comes out about this and as we learn more ourselves as well. But before we end with local today, I did want to bring up something else, and I'm sorry it's not on the agenda, but this came up literally earlier today. So at Wilmington's Tower Hill School, one of their administrators have been fired and banned from the campus after a search warrant by police took place at the school on Tuesday morning of Will Usherler for possessing, he's been charged with 5 counts of child porn. And again, this is after an investigation done by the police, and they executed the warrant over at the school. Now, the school's head of the school, Elizabeth Spears, sent out an email to all parents and students detailing that he has been banned from the campus and he is in custody with the police as of right now. You have anything on that?
Did you read the article? This is the second one in 7 years. And the one in 2015 who was accused of similar offenses, he walked because the search warrant was found to be illegal. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I just, unfortunately, birds of a feather tend to flock together and something's wrong.
Yeah, and that was in 2015, I think it was the former headmaster was charged with 25 counts of child porn, and all those all that was overturned because the warrant was unconstitutionally too broad when the police were searching for what they needed for evidence.
Well, you know, I think that it's a serious crime, and you know, one got away with it. We'll see what happens with this one.
Mm-hmm. And we'll be right back.
Like, I felt that it was holes in me, like breathing, and it just started getting fainter and fainter, and I just felt the warm holes, like me trying to breathe and the air was going out of the holes.
Shaquille Kilgo was shot 8 times on May 15, 2017, the same year that marked Wilmington's deadliest year for gun violence. His heart can be seen visibly beating from his chest after doctors had to remove 3 ribs to repair bullet fragments left behind from the shooting.
The city, they glorify that stuff. Oh, I got shot, and what? Who wants to get shot? Then it's mostly kids with guns. It's not people 30, shooting people. It's 15-year-olds.
And we're back. Look, we wanted to follow up with some things that have been going on. Just a few years ago, we all heard about the spill that happened in Newcastle, Old Newcastle area with the Croda plant, and the lack of awareness that went on around that. Now, since then, there has been bills passed sponsored by State Rep Larry Lambert to make sure that we have a better alert system when incidents like this happens. But recently, Croda has put out a concern. So, Jay, what's going on with Croda?
Well, there was a public hearing last week, and community residents and others expressed their concern about Croda, and with emphasis on the ethylene oxide, which when that's released is deadly poison, which I call the gas bomb. That's why all traffic going over the Memorial Bridge back and forth had to be stopped as long as that was leaking. And I appreciate what Representative Lambert and others have done as relates to legislation for the alarm. But in my opinion, and again controversial, the alarm is absolutely worthless in terms of telling residents what to do. Are they supposed to leave? Are they supposed to stay inside? What action are you taking? Okay, so we got deadly poison leaking over here. Mm-hmm. What's supposed to happen when the alarm goes off? Do we have any way, if it's at the point where people need to be evacuated, do we have a way to evacuate them? The alarm goes off, to me, is woefully insufficient in terms of providing information as to what people should or should not do. That's one. Two, in the article, which was a great article, great comments from people, it talked about the fact that there's a high cancer cluster in the Route 9 corridor. Well, that's not caused by the ethylene oxide running through those pipes over there. It's a continuation and a combination of the fact that the Route 9 corridor is the only place in the state of Delaware where heavy industry is allowed to exist, thrive, and operate adjacent to residential communities. And the cancer cluster, the high rate of cancer, is a combination of the heavy industry that's prevalent and the fact that you've got all these trucks coming back and forth and traveling out there. It's a major truck corridor with diesel fuel and all that, so it's a combination of everything. And that being the highest, having the highest cancer cluster rate in the state, it didn't just happen because of Croda and ethylene oxide. It's been that way for at least 10 years and probably longer than that. Mm-hmm. I've been in, so that has to be worked on. The fact that trucking industries and the other heavy industry that is located, not just Croda, in that Route 9 corridor continues to have a negative adverse impact as relates to the cancer cluster and the fact that we have people literally dying and suffering.
Which shocked me, right? So again, just some more background about this. In 2018, there was a leak, right, that caused all this stir. And they leaked about 3,000 pounds of this chemical. Now, this chemical, the ethanol oxide, right, is a highly flammable chemical, explosive chemical, but also it's 30 more times cancerous for adults than they originally thought. That's a huge red flag.
But let me go back. Okay, people need to understand what transpired. People need to understand what's going on right now. Because it's in my council district, mm-hmm. and former executive Tom Gordon became aware of the fact that Croda was going to try to bring in this ethylene oxide. We had planned to do everything we could to stop it. I guess somehow or another they figured out that we were going to do what we could from a county perspective to block it. And so DNREC all of a sudden intervenes and takes complete control of that. So for DNREC to have that public hearing, well, you authorized it. You purposely and intentionally took the authority and power away from the county to see to it that you controlled that. You authorized it, and now you have this public hearing as if you're really monitoring it, and it's any less safe than former executive Tom Gordon and I thought from the beginning. More importantly, and I want folks to hear me and hear me well, when I sponsored the legislation to cap the landfill, the Minquadale landfill at 140 feet, included in that legislation was and language that says that if heavy industry wants to make a change in what it's doing, it has to be approved by the county and county council. Now, Kuroda sued the county and said it's unfair, they didn't get notice, and they sued the county and said that aspect of the legislation that was approved by county council, signed into law by the county executive, was unconstitutional and it was unfair to them. It said it was unfair to them because they intend to expand.
Right.
Hear what I'm saying. Their legal papers say that Kuroda intends to expand, and the legislation that is approved and is a law now, approved by county council and signed into law by the county executive, it stops them from doing the expansion that they want to do. They lost in the lower court. They have appealed it. And this has to be, I wanted folks to understand that Kuroda wants to expand. It's in court, and if they prevail, they'll be allowed to expand, and there'll be nothing that the county can do about it. So it's important. It's an important appellate matter that's going to go before the Supreme Court of the state of Delaware, and I'm going to keep folks informed, and to the point where I think that when that appeal goes forward, we need to have residents in court making sure that this Supreme Court knows that this is just not acceptable to us.
I agree with you, and I look forward to following up with that and getting more information on that and reporting back out to everyone who's watching. Again, this is a critical issue, and I think, we have to keep following this very, very closely.
But the fact of the matter is, I'm going to say it again, the Route 9 corridor is the only area in the state of Delaware where heavy industry is allowed to thrive and adjacent to residential communities. It should have never been allowed in the first place, and for my people to continue to have to endure this is outrageous, and there's no relief in sight because all those heavy industries are grandfathered in to do what they want to do. Wouldn't be allowed. You can't put it anywhere else like that now by law, but everybody that was in existence prior to laws being changed is allowed to continue to operate and thrive. And again, that area having the highest cancer cluster in the state didn't happen solely because of this ethylene oxide. It's a continuation of all the heavy industry and all the trucks that are going back and forth in the area. And finally, would be me if I didn't bring controversy, but not once, but twice, when then President-elect Joe Biden appointed his environmental people sitting here, right downtown here on the at the Chase Center. When he appointed his environmental people, not once but twice, he talked about the example in Delaware was Route 9. Well, what are you going to do about it now that you're the president? And this litigation that I just talked about, the Justice Department should consider intervening to help with this problem, because I don't know how you're going to run around the country talking about environmental justice if you're not going to take care of what's transpiring. And you said it twice on national television. In Delaware, the example is the Route 9 corridor. So, in my opinion, the U.S. Department of Justice should be intervening. And the congressional delegation, somebody get this message to them. You want to do something, you go to the Justice Department and ask them to intervene in this litigation involving Crota, because it's very, very serious, and if they're allowed to expand, then the fact of the matter is the problem we have with sickness and death as a result of people living in Route 9 corridor being exposed to this is only going to get worse.
I agree. And you know what? We will be right back with more information for y'all. Welcome back. Look, as Pastor Curry says, it's Kobe's Corner. But I'm here to give y'all some updates about some of the things I've been talking about over the last few shows, and just where things stand at with certain legislation. So first, I had talked about SB 1, which was the paid family leave bill. That has officially passed and now has been signed, will be signed by the governor. But I also want to talk about something else. I want to talk about the $300 gas rebate that was proposed a few weeks ago. HB 336, which was a bipartisan House bill and Senate bill, has officially been signed by Governor Carney. And look, I know over the years, and it's been years, right, that we've been dealing with this public health crisis, this global pandemic. It's been very hard on a lot of people. And we talked about earlier in this show, with the city raising taxes, how we're still in this pandemic, how people are still suffering. So I'm very glad that we have elected officials down in Dover who are hearing some of those concerns, willing to try to do something. Even though, you know, for some people, $300 isn't a lot. For other people, $300 is, you know, it's going to change a lot of things for them. So how it works is if you filed your taxes in 2020, or qualified for unemployment, you will receive a $300 rebate, $600 for couples. And again, this is only for people who are adults. This does not include your kids. So this is a very good program that they're setting up, and people should start seeing their checks within a few weeks. And again, the total cost of this program is $230 million, but it's returning it to the taxpayers. It's your money already. You have anything on that?
Y'all can sing y'all can sing kumbaya about that all you want. The fact of the matter is I spent $100 the other day putting gas in 2 cars. When are you going to do something about the price gouging?
Well, that's a whole other thing, but if you don't want your $300 check, I'll take it. But
I didn't say I didn't want it.
But you know,
I spent $100 in gas the other day filling up 2 cars.
You got 3 tanks coming up. So while, you know, this economic recovery, you know, this goes towards economic recovery and taking strong steps, people have been slammed, and this is just a step to help that. Again, you know, as we're looking at what's going on right now, and, you know, they got those 2 big bills out of the way before their spring break, the General Assembly. I want to talk a little bit about spring break. Right now, I was just seeing all the kids out playing outside, enjoying Easter, riding their bikes. It's warmer out. The Division of Health and Public Health and the Department of Education are both strongly encouraging kids to get tested before returning to the schools. This is something that I agree with. I hope they set up testing sites, test-to-go sites at every school, or maybe at different schools within the school district that both teachers, educators, staffers, and the students can all go to make sure that they're getting tested before they go back into the school building. Because what we saw last time was during the holiday times, that's when those super super spreaders. People go and see their families and not necessarily are wearing the facial coverings because they're eating, they're enjoying the time, laughing, and having fun with family and friends. So make sure that your students are getting tested, and while they're getting tested, you get tested too. It's good for your health. And again, we're still in this pandemic, and it's definitely needed. But moving on, speaking of schools, last Thursday, after students came together and created a Black student union at Smyrna High School, they decided that in order to create more conversation about unity and about inclusion and diversity in their school, they asked the school could they paint a mural. And on the mural was a painting of Angela Davis, who had a quote that I am no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I'm changing the things I cannot accept. And it was a mural that was there to empower the students, to spur more conversation about diversity. And on Wednesday evening, the school district learned about the painting, and because of Angela Davis' past with the Black Panthers and her advocacy for BDS, which is a pro-Palestine stance, they decided to cover up the painting. So the students took action. They held a large sit-in, and it wasn't just the Black student unions. It was literally kids from every background. It was a multiracial, multi-grade sit-in, a peaceful sit-in, calling for attention to be brought that they want the mural to go back up. It led to the school being dismissed at 12:30 p.m. And they also got off Friday, and then it just rolled into their Easter break this week. But these are students who are saying they're no longer sitting back and doing nothing. This is something they cared about, and they made it known to the district. On Friday, after the protest, the school board came together and they debated it, and they are going to allow the students to have the mural go back up on the wall there. Now, the mural was not painted just by the students. It was approved by the school building. It was approved by the school administration, and it was painted and done under the supervision of staff at the school. So the kids didn't break any rules. They had the proper permissions. The district took a step that was not in tune with what the school actually wanted, and the students spoke up for it. So again, I have a video that I want to show you of the students in the foyer advocating for that.
Because the mural was covered up this morning. Someone on the board, or I spoke last night at the Board of Education meeting about the mural being put up. Someone got offended about it. They said that Angela Davis is or was anti-Semitic. If you don't know what anti-Semitic means, it means you're against Jews, you're anti-Jewish. We don't know right now if those claims are true. We're doing our research, but as far as we know, she's pro-Palestinian, which does not mean that she's against Jews. We're here for support, we're here for sanction, and right now we're just sitting here peacefully. If you're here for that, then stay, be respectful. If you're not here for that, then leave. Don't stay here just to be here.
Next, as I talked about earlier, and welcome back. As I talked about earlier, we are in the middle of budget season, which means on the federal level, what is going on right now is people from all different states are putting in requests. And in Delaware, our own U.S. Senator Chris Coons is advocating for federal funding, $1.6 million to be exact, to make body-worn cameras a focal point of what needs to happen by the end of the year. Now, this spurs off the back of a killing of a Black man down in Dewey Beach that we talked about earlier, Rodney Robinson. And again, that Dewey Police Department did not have body-worn cameras like they were supposed to. It was a law that was passed last year at the end of 2021 session of the General Assembly requiring a statewide body-worn camera program. Now, the funding that Senator Coons is advocating for is for long-term operating costs, especially for some of those smaller entities like Dewey, like the police departments that may only have 3 or 4 officers total. It's also going towards storage, service, and just making sure that it's sustainable for that. So they're asking people, the departments that need help, to make sure they get their requests in. And again, Governor Carney is trying to make a big push to get this done. Now, Jay, I know you've talked about the body-worn cameras. I know you talked about police a lot. Do you think this is something that can get done by the end of the year?
I think it can get done. I think it will get done, but it doesn't answer my problem. And you and the young people that you were working with leading up to the local protests of the situation with George Floyd, you saw to it that legislation passed. The governor made a commitment to you to get that legislation passed. My problem with it is we need to now have another law that says when it's going to be released. And it should not be at the sole discretion of the local government, the local police department, the local police chief. If it's controversial and people want to see it, it should be available within 48 hours. There are other jurisdictions in the country where that has happened, and the fact that I've had a problem with the fact that we know that a county police officer here in Newcastle County was arrested for dragging a teenage girl, pulling her by the hair, pulling her by the handcuffs. He was arrested. Good. But when I asked for the body camera footage to be released, I'm saying that basically I'm told, hell no, we won't go. Well, no, y'all need to be compelled to provide that information. And so I'm glad that Senator Coons is in fact bringing forward the funding for the cameras. But my question is, who, when, where, and how are we going to determine when and what's going to be released? And those who say, well, it adversely impacts the trial. Well, you can't change it. Whenever it happened, whatever the video shows, it's not going to change when you go to court. So why does the public have to wait till you go to court to be able to see it? Mm-hmm. And until such time as we have specific laws and regulations, rules and procedures at every government level, I'm not happy.
No, and I agree with you. And here's the more background on that. So we have 49, almost 50 police departments. We will soon have 50 police departments in the state of Delaware for less than a million people. And only 21 of them. Only 21 of them have purchased and have body-worn cameras. We're still trying to push for the rest of them to be in compliance, and that was reported out.
To be imposed.
Yeah, it should be, but they're slow walking the process right now. And also who's slow walking the process is the Delaware Council of Police Training, which was supposed to make recommendations on regulations and crafting those regulations of body-worn camera policies and how to utilize them. They are slow working this process. They should have been working on this when the bill first started, but they are just voting out of subcommittees, some of their recommendations, which means it probably won't go to a full committee vote for another few months. So again, this is still what we're fighting against. And this is the same committee whose chair sat across from me and said, we don't want this. Where, they're one of their members, Patrick Ogden from UD's police, has been very anti-policing reform when we're actually in meetings and wants to scale everything back that we want to do.
So we need to take that concern that you have straight to the university president.
Exactly.
Okay? Because if the university is going to be an obstacle to police reform, then the president is the final authority, and he needs to be told how we feel. Second, when police have rescued somebody, they've saved somebody, they can't wait to get that video footage out and release it. And that's good, okay? Mm-hmm. But if when you're right and you're doing something good, you release the video footage, then release it when you're wrong.
Right.
Okay, let's not play this game. We'll play fair and be consistent across the board.
I agree with you. And again, some of the members of that committee is the chair, both the chairs of the public safety committees in the House and in the Senate. So Marie Pickney in the Senate, and Representative Cook in the House. You have Chief Ogden, who's the president of the Association of Chief of Police. You have the mayor, Robert Christensen, the mayor of Dover, the mayor of Georgetown, William West. You also have Chief Tracy from Wilmington, Chief Botch from Newcastle County, Chief Johnson from Dover Police, Chief Turman from Newark Police.
Too many chiefs and not enough Indians.
I know. Secretary of Education Mark Holodick, Delaware Police Superintendent Melissa Zelby, and AG Kathy Jennings, and Homeland Security Secretary Nathan McQueen, the former superintendent of the state police, who is also the chair of the committee. Those are the people who are on it.
And where is citizen Johnny Smith, who got the hell beat out of him 5 years ago?
So the only public appointee on it is William Collick, who's a school board member down in Cape Henlopen. He's the former DSU football coach and athletic director. So there's supposed to be two others.
None of them collectively should be singing Kumbaya about this whole process and who's on that committee.
I agree.
And I'm going to say it again. You got all these police chiefs. It wasn't intended to benefit the police. It wasn't intended to benefit the police department. It was intended, y'all brought that forward, it was intended to protect the citizens.
Right. So the
from
governor,
abuse and misuse.
The governor has two more appointees to the council. I will hope that he would add two additional organizers who brought this policy forth. Again, I've made it very clear I do not want to serve on it, but there are other people who are qualified to serve on it who I believe should be appointed to that council to make sure that they are working diligently to get these regulations out there so that we have a baseline to go off of when things happen.
In your opinion, does the governor, as we speak, have the authority to mandate something as relates to release of body camera footage in his capacity as governor through executive order?
Only for state police.
Well, that's a start. And do other local local governments and say the mayor or say the county executive, they have that authority?
Most of them do. The city of Wilmington changed their rule to give full power to the chief of police and not the mayor.
Well, here's my concern, and I'm going to keep saying it, and the folks don't like it. For far too long, the police have been running the government. And that committee that you just named is a prime example of the police running the government as opposed to the government running the police. And that needs to be reversed. And when you put a task force together, and it's to bring about police reform, and the primary representatives on it are police chiefs and police advocates, it's flawed on its surface, and it needs to be changed. It wasn't about protecting the police. It wasn't about protecting the police chiefs. You sat there in direct response to what happened with George Floyd. Y'all demanded that there be a police body camera program. The governor and the mayor agreed. Well, who the hell is Chief Tracy to decide what is and isn't released for the city of Wilmington? I mean, I understand he's a police chief, but he's just a police chief. That is not what y'all intended.
Right. Agree. And, in closing today, I just want to say this is something we've been fighting for not just 2 years, but almost dating back to 2015. We're going to keep fighting for it. It doesn't stop here. And we still have a lot to still get done. So I'm looking forward to doing more work on this, bringing more people in, and making sure that we hold people accountable for their actions. And
in the words of the late, great Muhammad Ali, all I want to say to you is, rumble, young man, rumble.
My name is Kobe Owens.
J Street.
And thank y'all so much for tuning in today. Make sure y'all share us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube.
All those things I don't know anything about, but y'all have at it.
Take care, y'all.